Hey there, YouTube peoples. Welcome back to Socially Single. If this is your first time, welcome. If you've returned, I really appreciate your support, especially this me being a new channel. I'm V, and we're going to be talking about in this series 90 Day Fiancé. Nothing else added to the title. No side shows, nothing. The original concept of 90 Day Fiancé. So I'm so happy that we get to meet some brand new couples, and there are no recycled couples. And so I had an opportunity to finally watch episodes 1 and 2 to get caught up. And I am going to split these videos up between the couples. I might have one video share a couple of couples, but now that I have some more information regarding all the couples, I want to take my time and dig into deep with particular peoples. So this is my intro. I'm gonna put it in all the videos for each couple, and we're gonna see what this season's gonna be about. And I look forward to you liking and possibly subscribing. And I really want to hear your thoughts and comments in the sections below, which is the comment section, right? So I look forward to reading them. I won't be listening to them. I'm reading those comments. All right, let's get into this. All right, the first couple that we are going to be getting into is Marissa and Edward. So let's get some basic introductions out the way before we get into their story. So we have Marissa, who is from Bluebell, Pennsylvania, and she is, I didn't know prior to seeing the show because it's just not my world, but she's part of this rather well-known company called Kleinfeld Bridal or Kleinfeld Beauty. Not sure which one it is. I'm pretty sure it's a bridal. And that is the company where the famous show, also on TLC, Say Yes to the Dress is filmed. So we have Marissa, who is a executive vice president and the chief operating officer, COO of Kleinfeld. I'm going to just take a little bit of a gather here to where she works in New York City. She's working in one of the actual shops in New York. Something tells me that Kleinfeld, given how large the company is, might have corporate offices elsewhere, because it seems like she's just working in one of the shops, and it's possible that Kleinfeld doesn't want cameras and stuff like that filmed at their corporate office. So maybe that's the reasoning, but I could be completely off, right? I had never heard of them before the show. I did not watch Say Yes to the Dress, so I am not sure too much about how it is. She makes the comment about how she never gets tired of hearing women say yes to the dress that has been found. On the same token, she then later came back in the episode, was like, well, it becomes redundant, right? And she is, while she loves and enjoys her job, I do think that, when you're there for a long period of time, like apparently she has, it becomes really routine and just habitual. So you kind of get accustomed to how things are going to go, especially in a field like that. So she was never really interested for herself to have this big to do with having her own wedding and really going through the process as a client. And I'm sure some of us can relate that when you work somewhere, being the client can be a different experience because you just know the inner workings and you've helped it with so many others. So now having to do it for yourself or allow someone else to do that position and you truly just take a step back as a client, it can be different. And you may be forced to kind of go with it through fresh eyes, right? And so that's essentially kind of what she's going through right now. Now, who she's trying to marry, or who is at least in the running to be married, is going to be a guy named Edward Gomez from Punta Cana, Dominican Republic. And Marissa is 45 and Edward is 32. Okay. And of course, we get to meet him, and he is a hotel worker. He's works in the entertainment part of the hotels, and she met him on a girls' trip, of course, and felt something for him when they kind of had a chance to get to know each other a little bit more. Now let's get into this, how the introduction unfolds into something a little bit deeper. On the first trip there, they had a good time, and she was able to kind of spend time with him, but that was a fling. So she left, and then she came back. And the second time that she came back is when she actually was able to get his number information, and they really rekindled. He expressed how much he really missed her, and she was really taken with that. And so they begin developing a relationship, one in which she travels there like almost every month to see him, spend time with him, and did that, which I believe was about 6 months to a year. Now, Marissa is she is divorced from her ex-husband, whom she had 2 sons with, a 10-year-old and 11-year-old. And one of the things that she put out in her storyline that she's concerned about is, how is Edward going to fit into her lifestyle? We find out that, Marissa is on the higher end here, right? She's higher. She's I would consider to be upper middle class. If you know a little bit about Pennsylvania real estate, which I don't, something tells me the houses are just a little bit more smaller for the common person. And she has like a 2-story, probably with a basement, or a 2-story house in a very nice, clean, tree-lined sidewalk having neighborhood. And she also has her own condo in New York. So she works in New York, and she'll, of course, have her kids and her lifestyle really in Pennsylvania. So she's bringing in, I'm going to say, more than likely, a pretty good coin. And when we think about that, this is going to be important to really her storyline, because she has become accustomed to a certain lifestyle. And while we don't know a lot about her family and her history, or even her ex-husband's family, I just get a little bit of the vibe of she's not necessarily new money. She still has to work for her coin, of course, and no telling what the ex-husband did, and of course needs to provide per their divorce agreement. But she's not, I don't think she's hurting for dollars. And when we think about that, and also when we think about that, considering it's the Northeast, it's possible that she actually may have some legacy money involved in this. So she just may come from a certain background, or her husband, or ex-husband, where she's used to traveling and being, able to experience different cultures, and she's able to pass those experiences to her child. And so when we talk about Edward, right, this is someone who, as she was talking to her sons, who might make who might make in a month what an American might make in a week. Of course, we found out Edward has never traveled outside of his country. We don't know how much traveling he may have done within the Dominican Republic, but he's never been on an airplane. He was doing research on how do you even travel through an airport, which, as crazy as that might sound, I can appreciate him saying, hey, I don't know. So what I'm going to do is try to figure out. So when I get there, I can at least be prepared and not fully embarrass myself. And so, but there, we have to acknowledge there's a very big contrast between her lifestyle being here and maybe his lifestyle being a bit more simple, due to his culture and the fact that the Dominican Republic does rely heavily on tourism. And so this is going to be interesting. Not only is he younger, but he does not match the professional cachet that Marissa has built for herself. And so that's the part where we're going to get to see how he's going to adapt. Now, so of course that concerns Marissa, because now we're finding out that she's also a bit concerned about how is he going to be integrated into the family unit. Her ex-husband don't play by his kids, apparently. So she is very nervous. He is not someone who is laid back. Apparently, he has a bit of a temper. And she's been trying to coach Edward on how to deal with her ex-husband. She is very committed to them having a conversation when he does make the trip overseas. I made the trip over into New York to, of course, meet the kids and all that. However, I don't know why they just don't have a conversation prior to his arrival, if that's what she's worried about. Because, here's my thing. I feel like that when you have money, it's hard for me to feel bad for you, because the reality is you have money to pay for convenience and solutions. And one of the things that I'm referring to is it would not be much at all for her to just say, let's schedule a Zoom call together, or while I'm over here in the DR, let me go ahead and call, I believe her ex-husband name was Michael, I believe, and let's talk about what this is going to look like. Like, we know this won't be Edward's children. However, the reality is, while she shares 50-50 custody with her ex-husband, particularly given how she has to travel for work and do things, and she's afforded the ability to travel to the DR every month to see Edward, at least before he comes over, I think it would be prudent, if she's saying that they're good co-parents and they really have become good at good co-parenting after their divorce, that their sons are going to have a certain level of respect for the adults who's being introduced to the household. And there are ways to do that. However, she has definitely let us know that he is not someone who probably is the typical 32-year-old that we might be accustomed to within the States, that might have already been through certain experiences. And I'm not saying that of course, that wouldn't be something that doesn't happen in the DR. However, we have to really think about this for a moment of like, he is going to be moving to New York and living in Pennsylvania. And not only does he have to get used to being in the US, he's going to have to get used to being a much more, I don't want to say controversial, but a very fast-paced way of living in the U.S. Like, he's not coming to Kentucky. He's not coming to Wisconsin or even Minnesota, where I'm at. Like, he's not even going to Georgia, where it's slower pace. No, he's going to be in New York, and he's going to be in Pennsylvania. And we're talking about someone who already has achieved certain things that, let's be honest, some of us has not reached. We're talking about someone who has a very high pressured job. When you're the vice president and you're a chief operating officer, you're part of an executive team. Things look different than a person who is serving customers at the front desk, right? So, and we're talking about, so when you're in a certain tax bracket, there are also things that you have to do to protect your resources, and things that you have to do to keep, not only to maintain money, but to protect your assets. And then there's the complexity of having 11 and 10-year-olds that he's going to have to interact with, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how that is unfold. I got to be honest, I like her boys. And when I say that, I can tell that based off how the boys were responding to her when we met them, that they have a really good communication system. And more than likely, they have that with their father as well. So, V, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? Her boys she's like, hey, when they were asked the question by Marissa, so how do you feel about Edward coming? What's going through your head, right? And they were like, I was excited, right? Initially, like, it'd be awesome because she promised him a dog. So of course she's luring them in, right? Like, when he comes over, I'm gonna get y'all a dog. I'm not mad at that. That is a good way to, I think, spread responsibility, give them a little distraction even to to kind of give them something to kind of work with as Edward gets acclimated and they're able to kind of figure out what is his family unit going to look like moving forward. The question I have is a dog going to go with them to daddy's house when they are not there, or is he going to be required to take care of the dog in the house like a nanny would? That's my question. So, but anywho, that is neither here or there regarding that. So they had questions, particularly the oldest, who seems to talk more for his brother, which there's always going to be one who's like, I don't got time for the BS. So let's get into this. Let's get into the nitty gritty. And he was like, so is he going to have any money when he comes? Good question. That is a good question that many of us should be asking, especially when we have different circumstances between these two individuals. She said, I don't know, right? He's probably living paycheck to paycheck. We got to assume this. And she explained to him that, hey, he's not, what he's making at the hotel just probably would not be comparable to what the average American makes here. And he's like, well, did he have a job? Like, and she's like, yeah, he has a job. He worked in a hotel. That's where I met him. And her son went even further to ask, well, is it a fancy hotel? Or like, it's just like, like a regular schmeckler hotel, right? And she was like, well, I stayed there. So we're already getting the vibe that these are kids who are used to traveling. They know a bit about their privilege. They're privileged, right? These are privileged white people who they're not staying at Holiday Inns and probably the Ramada Inn. You know what I mean? They're going to be staying at a certain level. And if she's selling 5-figure dresses, for God's sakes, and it has a whole show behind it that is lauded to be on the upper echelon of probably bridal shows and bridal businesses, something tells me that she's traveling in a certain way and they're used to, they are accustomed to a certain lifestyle. So they're like, they're nervous about another guy coming to live in the house, right? Of course, to them, the last person their mommy has been with and kissed has been their father. And she said that the divorce was not a very easy or pleasant divorce. So while they are in a good place now, she is definitely concerned about if Edward being there is going to ruffle the feathers. And the oldest says what I would expect I would expect the son to say, especially as the oldest, or even a single child like myself would do. To be clear, he's not going to be my father. Like, he's not going to replace my dad. And he's like, to be honest, while I was initially excited, I hope he's not going to come in here and think he's going to tell me what the fuck to do. Like, and of course, you have specific verbiage and vernacular, but let's read between the lines. He's like, I'm excited for him to be here, cool, but we need to take it slow. We need to take it slow. Whatever parenting that Marissa and Michael has done with their two boys, they're very intelligent. And a lot of times we don't give that credit to kids. Like, we tend to reduce what they may know and see and recognize and acknowledge, and when they may say things, it may get brushed over sometimes, but kids be knowing, right? Like, kids be knowing, especially if they're there to see what's going on around them, right? And while we can tell them, don't see this and don't do that, they're going to see and they're going to do. I mean, they're going to probably keep quiet about it. But him and his brother been having talks about, like, let's talk about this. And I wouldn't be surprised if Michael, who we have not met yet as of these first 2 episodes, doesn't have his own opinions and probably has had talks with his sons about this too. So I'm always a little bit cringe when we have kids on the show. However, I thought this was very appropriate to be included in that conversation because nonetheless, it is going to be an effect on their lifestyle for sure. And so now I don't agree with Marissa when she wanted to expound upon trying to educate or tell Edward how he needs to handle Michael and how not to respond to Michael and so on and so forth. Let me tell you something. While I can appreciate her giving Edward maybe a heads up to things, there's only so much, especially a woman, is going to tell two men about how they need to handle each other about matters that affects both of them. Because either way, he's going to be some form of adult figure to these boys. Maybe he doesn't rise fully up to the role of stepfather. Maybe he just is not immature. Maybe he's immature. He ends up being another child from Marissa, and he's more like a big brother. But his presence in the household, living with them, is going to have some form of influence on these boys' life in some capacity. Even if it's the boys saying, because of him, I'm not going to do this. Or it could be the opposite, where because of him, he's encouraging me to do this in a way that my father may not do it. But regardless, he's going to have an impact. And I think that I like the fact that she is very clear on the fact of Michael and Edward have to have a conversation, but you can't control how that's going to work out between two men. We go, us men are going to approach things the way we feel we need to approach things, and there's only so much you'll be able to tell me as to how to handle that conversation, right? So if they feel they have to kind of, depending on how alpha they may be feeling, it just might have to be what it's going to be. Now, if it gets to a serious level, whatever, that's a different story. But, this man, I'm sure, particularly with Michael and with him, they both have things to lose. He's not trying to complicate his custody situation, nor put himself in a position with this show, especially. And while we don't know what he does, in today's world, especially considering that 90 Day hasn't really been getting the highest quality of people to be on their shows, there's a certain image that he's going to want to protect. And same with her on the show, for sure, despite the relationship that 90 already has with TLC and Say Yes to the Dress. And so, and with Edward, he's not going to jeopardize his ability to be in the United States, because let's face it, he hit the lotto. And I know that makes people want to kind of say, well, she needs to watch out. That I do agree. Well, I don't remember her saying this. I hope a prenup is something she's considering. We have to be honest, and this is just simple business. A marriage is a business. It's an agreement. So for the sake of her children and her assets, she needs to protect herself. Even if it has a time limit on there, and I don't want to say that even to the point where he is so disadvantaged, because he is leaving all that he has. He's giving up everything in the Diara to be here in the U.S. for her. And I will argue for the betterment of himself, and probably, of course, the same old story. He needs to send money to his family and all that. And this is the 9-day visa. It was the K-1 process. So unlike the spousal version of this, he has to come over here, and he is legally not allowed to work. So first going to be getting married, and she's made it very clear to us that she wants to go through the whole process first, like the whole 90-day process, to really decide if this is something she really wants to move forward with. And when she does move forward with it, then he has to apply for the green card, and that itself is going to be a longer process. And no telling how that's going to look in the current social climate that we're living in under that Chihuahua as a president, right? So we just got to be, it'll be interesting to see what their story turns into. But I got to say, I am not against the fact that she's like, I'm going to take my time. Now, do I think this is going to work out? Preliminary speaking, based off what I have seen, no. I think that he is just a little too, what's the word I should use, y'all? Put it in the comments down below. Because I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I want to be honest about this. He knows nothing about her lifestyle. And I think what I'm interested in really knowing is, Marissa, what are you looking for Edward to provide to you in this relationship? Like, what is the transactional agreement here? And we got to be honest. Like, is he coming here to be a house sitter, a babysitter, or a nanny? Are you going to be expecting him to be cleaning? Aside from him making you feel good in between your legs and off in your butt, what else is he going to be offering, to contribute to your lifestyle? And I do think it is important that when you're in that position, as someone who has dated individuals that are 2 or 3 tax brackets above where I was, especially at my younger age, for me, it was important to say, while you may have more resources than me, and I don't come from a family of wealth like some of those individuals did, let's talk about what are you expecting from me in a possible relationship? And let's just define that to see if I'm willing to provide it, and vice versa, right? Like I'm very clear on the fact that there's a lot I don't know. And if you're able to have a career and sustain a lifestyle that I would consider to be nice and relatively stressless compared to the concerns that I have coming from a poor and a po background, but I couldn't even afford the O and the R in my family. There's possibly some things that that would help me be educated on things to elevate my lifestyle and my thinking to be in preferably a higher tax bracket, and to be stable, right? Financially stable, and have some financial acumen about how I handle my business the older I get. But that can't just only be it, right? Like that is also a mentor-mentee relationship where that's how we involve intimacy. So what else are we going to contribute? Are you going to be okay with the fact that he doesn't know certain things, and you're going to have to really train him on that? Or is he going to be so cheap to where you're like, hey, I may fly first class, or I see the value in global entry and pre-check, and I guess I'm talking about myself, but I have my metal suitcase that's going to fit European standards versus the American standards. So there's just a certain way of doing things when you have had the privilege to experience, certain lifestyles and move a certain way. I'm very big on the fact of I'm not going to buy the cheapest thing. Well, I'm also not someone who's going to be buying the most expensive thing just because of the price tag. However, I'm very big on getting the item that is going to best serve me and adapt to my lifestyle in a way in which some other options would not be. So headphones being over $200, $300 is typically something that I have to think about. But I'm not some audiophile to where I'm going to be sitting here paying $5,000 or $1,000 just for some specific headphones to listen to a certain frequency. That's not my level. But I can recognize the difference where things are just a little bit too teeny and cheap for that. And I'm just saying all that because these are things that y'all should probably discuss. With him not being used to, prosciutto and pancetta. Would be he, is he just a bacon dude? Is he gonna be saying, hey, I just need some rice and grits so I can make it through? And would he be okay with the bill saying, hey, if you're gonna take care of me, I'm not used to, them kids ain't used to just having no simple, basic kids meal. I'm sure they're cool with it, but there are times where something tells me where they've been able to eat at certain restaurants, and while they may or may not have a high level of appreciation for it at their young ages, it's possible that they're exposed to it at the very least and can understand the differences between things. So when I'm talking about that difference in lifestyle, that's where I'm going into. Now, look at the picture, okay? Because I'm going to put it up. Marissa says she's 45. I think we got to be honest. Marissa don't look 45, okay? Marissa looks, she's a cute 55 pushing 60. It has lived, baby. She has lived. And I'm gonna be honest, I do think it's just because of the fact of her cheeks are a little bit too sunken in. And while I'm not an expert on the body and surgeries and, whatever people pay for beauty, I mean, I'm just an average looking guy myself, so I'm not trying to come into her because I think Marissa is pretty. But Marissa is somebody where, girl, have the ice cream and don't go running afterwards. It's okay. Eat the burger. It could be a wheat bun, but do a double patty. She could stand to gain about 15 pounds, preferably in the face. If she was able to kind of fill out a little bit more, I think that she would not look as old as she does. Because, no, to be fair, she looks old. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't mean she's ugly. I absolutely love a cleaned up, mature woman. I really do. And because they're just so intentional with their decisions when it comes to their appearance all of the time. So, it's just a certain stature that comes along with it. In her case, she's kind of in between and she's not quite there yet. And being in the field that she's in, understand being skinny and model skinny, I get that it's its own look and lifestyle. But in her case, you're of a certain age. So therefore, not having a lot of weight on your bones looks different. And if it's possible for her, because she just may have genes that don't allow her to gain weight, I think she needs to kind of get some filling in those cheeks. Filling in those cheeks and, and maybe the arms. If you're going to be wearing sleeveless things, Marissa, I think it will go a long way to helping to fill out that appearance. Considering that you'll be dating a 32-year-old man. And Edward's not ugly. Edward is a good-looking man in my opinion. I also don't say a good-looking man in my appearance. That doesn't make any sense. He's a good-looking man in my opinion. So there we have it. Now, another big part that I don't want to miss out about is she was talking to her squirrel friends down at the job, and I'm not someone who, I get that your colleagues can be friends. I also think that there are just certain things you should not talk about with your colleagues, especially your subordinates, of course. And the conversation I'm referring to is she revealed to those ladies that he got an adult circumcision because he claims he wanted one before traveling here to America. Now, we never heard exactly from him why he really wanted the circumcision. She claims to not have had anything to do with suggesting that or encouraging that, but I really want to know more about it. And 90 Day Fiancé has a habit of just being a little too in depth and too much TMI when it comes to the sexual aspects of people's lives. So that they can miss me with all that. However, just because I'm curious medically, I would want to understand, and given that he has a platform to talk about this, what was the necessary need that adult circumcision was necessary. Now, of course, it can just simply be he just wanted one. But, was it for any religious reasons? Typically, if you didn't know, when it comes to Jewish and Muslim cultures, that circumcision might be necessary for their religious benefits. And so they possibly may have to have that surgery for that religious purpose. And then we have a situation where, is there a skin condition that he might be dealing with, like to where maybe the foreskin is just a little bit too tight on there, and because of the enclosure over those glands, could that be causing some issues with smells or discomfort and everything? What is your reasoning? I would love to know that, and it'll be good to find out, hey, is this something that really is necessary? Does it have something to do with the Dominican Republic culture that we don't know? There is a lot of studies that, there are some research studies to where we just don't have a lot of information when it comes to why adult circumcision might be, necessary, globally speaking. Of course, in the U.S., we can determine more about that. People who have that, but considering he's from the Dominican Republic, I just wonder why. Or was it really just the fact of his girlfriend having a comment about how it looked, or it was a smell? That's possible. But I did find out that, adult male circumcision is something that has become a bit more common worldwide as relates to HIV prevention. And now, while there might not be so much as medical studies confirming that, being uncircumcised carries the necessary cells in order to pass on STDs, because that's not to suggest that circumcised men aren't able to get STDs and pass it on to others. However, it is something that has been implemented into many programs worldwide, and it is a type of surgery that is available in most countries. And so therefore, unlike other things, you can't get in other countries. So it'll be interesting to know what that is. So that's what I got. That's all I got about Marissa and Edward. I think they've been together for about maybe 2 or 3 years. She's been divorced for 6 years, so she really didn't rush into anything, it sounds like. We're going to meet Michael, her ex-husband, in a later episode, so we'll get to understand what is this concern that she has about him. And this is just early. We don't know a ton about them. He's not there in the States yet. Obviously, this being like the fiance, the original, he will be making his way to the States. And this is one couple where she has resources. So if there was any complexities with getting him over there that came up outside of something serious that would have prevented him coming here, we wouldn't know about it, right? Because she can just pay out of that. So that's all I got. I ain't got no more about Marissa Edward. I didn't know I would go this long, but maybe if you look at my other videos, you probably already know I'm a little bit more long-winded. But I would love, love, love to know your thoughts. And of course, if you enjoyed this, please hit the thumbs up, not the thumbs down. Don't confuse those two. They're a big difference. And so I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Take care. Have a good one. Bye-bye.